All right, all right. Yeah, this is your host, Louis George Walker. Welcome to today. This is Monday, and we're glad to have you into the BFTAA and More Show. BFTAA and More Show is brought to you by the Black Family Technology Awareness Association and the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, located at 4510 East Linwood Boulevard, has been tutoring and giving advanced education classes to students for 45 years. It is a foundational institution in the Kansas City area. If you want to find more information about how to get your child enrolled, please go to the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center website, or you can call 816-523-3339. Leave your name and contact information, and somebody will get back with you. But we are glad that you're joining us here today. As you see, this is a part of KUAW. I'll get out the way a minute. There. It says Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom. That's KUAW. It's a partnership between the Black Family Technology Awareness Association and the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center that came together to form this radio station to get information out to the community, to get information that you can use and that you don't always pick up on the regular channels here. So wanted to make sure that we got this out to you. I'm just now noticing that I don't have the chat feature set up in here for you to put your information on. I'm going to see if I can add it in to our software now. That would be a good thing to have. Let's see if we can bring up the browser. Yes, we do have chat. So let me add the chat in here. That way, if you want to chat with me online while I'm on here, you'll be able to do it. Get that in. You might not see anything happening right now, but it is going on. And we'll get that chat feature started. Yeah, we're constantly trying to improve and bring things to you. Some of the other shows have theirs already set up, which I did, but I didn't set one up for my insert, which I do have now. So let's see if we hit the chat and refresh it right quick. It should tell us if we're connected. Oh, wait a minute. I got to get the properties in here. We're all right. There we go. Now let's see if we're connected. There you go. All right. We're connected. It says a connection established to the BFTAA page and to the KUAW radio page. So if you give us, right now, if you're watching us on Facebook on either of our pages, the Black Family Technology Awareness Association or KUAW radio, you will see your chat come up. I see I'm watching up here now. I do appreciate that. And if you want to ask questions or post something into the chat, just type it on in there and we'll get it. So we appreciate you contacting us. We would like to know how you like KUAW radio and what we're doing here. So we're bringing this out to the public. We not only do talk like this, but we have smooth jazz shows. We have old school shows. We even have a heavy storm, quiet storm show and some blues on here. So we do some music and entertainment for you along with giving you some information and knowledge. So it's not all work and no play. And we'd like to know if you listen to our radio broadcast. We broadcast on the TuneIn app, Get Me Radio, Online Radio Box, and My Tuner. So those are our main ones, but Get Me Radio also gets us on Apple TV and on Roku, so you can pick KUAW up on many of your online sites. Also, if you have a smart speaker, tell it to play KUAW. If you have Google or Amazon, I actually have an Amazon one at home, and if we tell it to play KUAW, it comes out. So you'll hear us talking or you'll hear our music. We're broadcasting 24 hours a day, so not only when you see us on here live, but when we're not live, you can pick us up. So that's what we're doing now. So I got a little bit to talk to you about. I don't know if I have time to go through all of it, but there are interesting things happening in the world here locally and around the world. So we're going to get to that. One of the first things we want to do as our regular feature is to show you what's going on at NASA. That's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, part of the United States government or a quasi-government organization that works with space, but not only space, but research and development into better flying airplanes and satellites that are taking pictures and doing measurements of the Earth's surface, of temperatures, of global warming, that type of thing. So a lot of research and development goes on there. And our job as the Black Family Technology Awareness Association is to try and get this information to young people. We want young people to get involved in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's the STEM programs. So we'd like for you to tell your kids that they can go to the NASA site. It's nasa.gov, and there's games on there. There's a lot of science stuff for all ages. If you're interested in, or if you have a child that's interested in it, they have a lot of different things on there. We got involved with them through our robotics program because NASA is definitely involved in robotics. And I met somebody from NASA and decided to go to check out their site. And they also do funding of robotics teams and programs around the country. So you want to get involved in that or get your children involved so that they can find out if they're interested in it or not. Everybody's not going to be a rocket scientist, an engineer, mathematician, or anything like that, but they need to be exposed to it to see if they have that inclination, if they like it or not. So try to get your child involved in it. Go to the NASA site and watch it. But what we have right now is what's going on this week at NASA. So they'll talk about some of the newer things that are happening. So let's sit back and relax and enjoy that. What's going on this week at NASA?
Testing our mega moon rocket and ground systems, preparing the James Webb Space Telescope for science, and testing an instrument for future X-59 research. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA. From April 12th to 14th, NASA conducted a modified wet dress rehearsal for the agency's Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft on Launch Pad 39B at our Kennedy Space Center in Florida, ahead of the uncrewed Artemis 1 moon mission. The multi-day wet dress rehearsal focused on loading fuel into the rocket's core stage tanks, refining countdown procedures, and validating critical models and software interfaces. In addition to the 2 recent test runs for wet dress rehearsal, this modified test allowed teams to practice operations critical to launch success ahead of the Artemis 1 mission. On April 7th, the mid-infrared MIRI aboard the James Webb Space Telescope reached a cooling milestone as it prepares for science this summer. With the assistance of a cryocooler, the instrument reached its final operating temperature of less than 7 kelvins, minus 447 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just a few degrees above the lowest temperature matter can reach. Webb's 4 science instruments, including MIRI, initially cooled off in the shade of the tennis court-sized sun shield, but making the final temperature drop is essential for the observatory's only mid-infrared instrument that will play a key role in understanding the origins of stars and planets. NASA conducted a series of flight tests at our Armstrong Flight Research Center in California to evaluate improvements made to a shock-sensing probe designed to measure the unique shock waves that our quiet supersonic X-59 aircraft will generate during flight. The probe was mounted on the nose of a NASA F-15 research aircraft to measure shock waves from a NASA F-18, using flight techniques that will test the X-59's shock waves during the future acoustic validation phase of quiet supersonic flight. NASA's Hubble Space Telescope has determined the size of the largest icy comet nucleus ever seen by astronomers. The estimated diameter of behemoth comet C/2014 UN-271 is approximately 80 miles across, making it larger than the state of Rhode Island. Using a series of 5 Hubble images taken of the comet in January 2022, combined with a computer model of the surrounding dusty coma, scientists revealed a massive but measurable star-like nucleus that is about 50 times larger than what's found at the heart of most known comets. On February 14th, NASA's Lucy spacecraft obtained a series of calibration images with its 4 visible light cameras. While the first test images were taken shortly after launch, the February tests were much more extensive. Using its instrument pointing platform, Lucy pointed at 11 different star fields to test camera performance and sensitivity, as well as the spacecraft's ability to point accurately in different directions. Lucy, which launched in October 2021, is the first space mission set to explore a diverse population of small bodies known as the Trojan asteroids. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web at nasa.gov/twan.
All right. Yeah, that's some of what's going on this week at NASA. It's a lot of good information. We also have another show that runs along with that, and that is the, what is it? Space to ground. Yeah, there you go. So we're going to show you space to ground right now, give you back-to-back. Sometimes some of the information overlaps, but at the same time, it gives you a different perspective on some of the things going on at NASA. So this is a weekly broadcast, and we like to show it and pass that information on to you. So hold on just a second, and here we go. Let's see.
Preparations are underway for a pair of Russian spacewalks. On Saturday, April 9th, after a journey of almost 21 hours, the Axiom Mission 1 astronauts Michael Lopez Alegria, Larry Connor, Etan Stebby, and Mark Pappy arrived at the International Space Station. The SpaceX Dragon spacecraft docked to the Harmony module while the spacecraft were flying about 260 miles above the Atlantic Ocean. Lopez Alegria is on his 4th spaceflight and his first as an Axiom Space astronaut. He partnered with AX-1 pilot Larry Connor to explore how living in microgravity affects cellular aging and cardiac cells. The other 2 Axiom-1 astronauts, Mark Pappy and Etan Stebby, explored DNA sequencing, brain dynamics, the cardiovascular system, and tested holoportation, or transmitting mixed reality 360-degree images of humans to space. The flight of Axiom-1 represents both a culmination of NASA's efforts to foster a commercial market in low Earth orbit and a beginning of a new era of space exploration that will enable more people to fly on more kinds of missions. Looking ahead, a pair of Russian spacewalkers will venture outside the station. 2 cosmonauts continue gearing up for a pair of spacewalks, the first to be conducted on Monday, April 18th, to configure the NAOGA multi-purpose laboratory module for the European robotic arm. Roscosmos flight engineers Oleg Artemyev and Denis Matveyev had a fitness test, checked their Orlan spacesuits, and installed pressure tanks in the Poise module as part of standard pre-spacewalk preparations. Russian flight engineer Sergei Korsakov set up hardware to assist the spacewalkers for their robotics work outside NAOGA. As always, you can watch the spacewalk live on NASA TV, nasa.gov, and the NASA app. Coverage starts at 10 a.m. Eastern. You can get a daily on-orbit status report by visiting our space station blog at blogs.nasa.gov. That's Space Around for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
All right. So those are a couple of the shows that we do on a weekly basis. If you want to know what's going on at NASA, tune in every Monday. We usually start the show off with that. So between 5 and 5:15, you'll be able to pick that up and find out what's happening in NASA. And you can also go to the NASA page or YouTube and see some of the same information. But I think it's very interesting. And if you want to put oh, wow, now my wife is telling me that we didn't hear Space to Ground. Well, we'll have to redo it and see if we can get the audio in there. That was my bad, I guess. I don't know why it wouldn't come on. Let's try that again right quick. See why it won't.
Houston Station on Space to Ground. Welcome to Space to Ground. I'm Shaniqua Marine. This week, the first all-private astronaut mission docked to the International Space Station, while preparations are underway.
I don't know what's going on here.
On
Let's see, desktop monitor output. Not sure. Oh, here we go.
Arrived at the International Space Station. The SpaceX Dragon spacecraft docked to the Harmony module while the spacecraft were flying about 260 miles above the Atlantic Ocean. Lopez Alegria is on his fourth spaceflight and his first as an Axiom
I
space
still don't know if it's going out.
One pilot Larry Connor to explore how living in microgravity affects cellular aging.
That is strange.
The other two Axiom 1 astronauts, Mark Pappy and Eton
It says it's going, but we don't know.
the cardiovascular system and
Monitor output.
or transmitting mixed reality 360
Okay, so I guess you have to read that to make sure that you understand what's going on, because it should be going out, but for some reason, oh, wait a minute, let's see if we can get it
era
now.
of space exploration
There.
that will enable more people to fly on more kinds of missions.
There we go.
Looking ahead, a pair of Russian spacewalkers will venture outside the station. Two cosmonauts continue gearing up for a pair of spacewalks, the first to be conducted on Monday,
All
April
right, so
18th,
there's the
to
sound
configure
now,
the
so you can check
Naoka
it out.
multi-purpose laboratory module for the European robotic arm. Roscosmos flight engineers Oleg Artemyev and Denis Matveyev had a fitness
There's
test,
always
check
a
their
button
Orlan
or two that
spacesuits,
you
and
can
installed
forget.
pressure tanks in the Poise
Or a
module
switch.
as part of standard pre-spacewalk preparations. Russian flight engineer Sergei Korskakov set up hardware to assist the spacewalkers for their robotics work outside Naoka. As always, you can watch the spacewalk live on NASA TV, nasa.gov, and the NASA app. Coverage starts at 10 a.m. Eastern. You can get a daily on-orbit status report by visiting our space station blog at blogs.nasa.gov. That's Space to Ground for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
All right, well, we try to get you some information on it, and like they say, you can check it out on the NASA site and get some more information from that, or watch it on YouTube. But we'll be working on it to make sure that we try and keep it going for next week, yes. Hey, but we're glad that you are here, and a couple of things that we did want to cover, and it all kind of goes back to this technology, not just the pandemic, but how technology is being used and affecting us in our day-to-day living. Now, one thing I was looking at was that the historically black colleges and universities are trying to catch up on using this technology, on making sure that they can use it. You know, the pandemic, not only at the colleges, but in some of the schools in urban centers and in rural areas and stuff, we found out how the technology was lacking. And not just the technology, but the infrastructure to support the technology. So that's something that we've been looking at. And one of the things that I picked up was an article that says 2 years since the pandemic forced a pivot, how have HBCUs innovated online? And it talks about, despite the first online courses being developed in 1993, it has taken decades for HBCUs to widely adopt the technology. In March 2020, HBCU students had to turn to online classes, which meant faculty had to quickly get trained on how to shift their courses online. Now, through designing online platforms catered towards the specific needs and cultures of HBCU, schools are starting to create their future of online learning. So that's the thing that we found out in urban settings, and now looking at this report in HBCUs, that we were still doing some of the old-fashioned teaching. And not that it was bad teaching, but the pandemic pointed out some of the deficiencies that could be avoided. You know, when you had to stay home, being able to go online, being able to use a computer became a necessity. It wasn't just a luxury, and that was the way it was kind of treated. A lot of times we want to do the things that we've been doing the same way we've been doing them because it worked for my dad and it worked for me, so it should work for you. But things are constantly changing. Education is changing, just like young people are changing. You know, the world continues to change. So that's one thing that we have to look at. And we've been finding out that even on the college level, it's a problem. It says few, and this article was written in April 12th, 2022 by Martha Donistork. It says few, if any, HBCUs were prepared 2 years later, HBCUs are still reimagining online education after the pandemic radically shifted how we learn and work. Despite the first online course, it says before the pandemic, when you looked at the online learning space and just tried to understand the calculus of what it would take to do those innovations versus the benefits, and benefits might not have been there for a number of our institutions. That's Julian Thomas, Director of Strategy at the United Negro College Foundation, Institute for Capacity Building. So those are things that we have to look at, is that our organizations, our schools were behind, and a lot of times it was because they didn't have the resources. It says a major reason is a lack of resources. HBCUs have been systematically underfunded and on average have deferred maintenance backlogs. Repairs that were not performed when they should have been is an issue across HBCUs. In 2018, the Government Accountability Office found that on average, public HBCUs reported deferred maintenance backlogs of $67 million, while at private HBCUs it was $17 million. So that means they weren't keeping up with the stuff that they had, let alone being able to innovate and bring new things in. A 2018 study by education researchers examining HBCUs and online learning found that technology requires a constant cash flow. For HBCUs struggling to stay afloat, the cost can be a stretch or even an impossibility. Yeah, you can't buy, and you've probably found that out at home too. You buy a computer, it works good for 7 or 8 years, but it's been slowing down, and you've been thinking you've been needing to get one probably for 2 or 3 of those. In business, in 2 or 3 years, 4 years, they're changing out computers. And in schools, they have to change them out regularly because there's innovation, there's things happening. Plus, they get used a lot and they get beat up a lot. So the technology has to change, not just computers, but the servers behind it. And even like now there's fiber optics. Well, there was a lot of technology put in that fiber optics weren't around. So that was an upgrade that had to be done. So these are the type of things that are constantly having to be done, not just at the HBCUs, but at public schools. You know, the Kansas City School District, when they had the big integration settlement and they put in a lot of computer rooms and stuff, even though that was kind of done with not a lot of forethought or with a lot of good planning, but the stuff that they put in the buildings back then, it can't work now. Some of the hardwiring is still good. The fact that they've got cabling, if they've got Cat 5, especially if they've got 5E or Cat 6, wires can be used. But a lot of institutions have moved farther than that. There's fiber optics running in the server rooms and behind the walls, and those are things that we have to look at. So things have been happening. It says in recent years there has been steadily growing adoption of online learning by HBCUs and their students. In the 2011 and 2012 school year, just 64 of 102 federally recognized HBCUs offered distance education services. By 2019, 81 HBCUs offered at least one distance education course. So during the 2019 and 2020 school years, the HBCUs that offered undergraduate distance education courses, on average, nearly half of the students were enrolled in at least one distance class. So those are things that we have to look at, and we have to make sure that our schools are being funded, that they can provide what the kids need. Now it says in mid-March of 2020, HBCU students had to turn to online courses under strict lockdown rules that moved them out of their classroom, which means faculty had to quickly get trained on how to shift their courses online. Now that was something that we even noticed in Kansas City School District. It says, I equated what happened in the spring to being on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific and getting pushed into the ocean and then told to learn how to swim. That was Wayne Dawkins, an associate professor at Morgan State University, said in a recent study examining how communications programs at HBCUs pivoted in the pandemic. But some organizations started offering life rafts to their professors. I got on the phone with UNCF and some institutional leaders and said, how can we support? We've had decades of supporting learners online, building impactful courses, and so we would love to extend our work and be supportive during the pandemic. So that's the thing that happened, is that people had to learn. It wasn't like it was their fault. It wasn't like there were teachers that weren't teaching, but some weren't using the latest stuff. And we find that even in our own day-to-day life, and a lot of us found out that, well, we didn't know what Twitter was. We didn't know what Zoom or Microsoft Teams or any of those different applications were, and it stayed away from them, and we're having a hard time with everybody telling us, well, you need to get on this, you need to get on that. Even getting our church members online. A lot of them hadn't done it. We've got an older church that I belong to, and getting online was a stretch. But some made that pivot. Some saw the need. Some wanted that connection, and they made that pivot to learn. And there's a lot more people that know what Zoom is now, or what Microsoft Teams or any other online, than it was before the pandemic. Sometimes we're forced into getting that education that we need. Sometimes it's just like on the job. They say, well, you'll learn how to use this computer, or you're going to be out on the street. And we learned how to use the computer at least enough to get the work done that they wanted done. But those are things that we have to look at. And for our young people, we've even got to do it faster. We've got to let them not just be forced into it, but to be innovators, to look at new ways and say, hey, we can do it this way. See, we've gotten by, or we did, that forced learning. Oh, well, you got to learn it. You have to do it now and stuff. But we don't want it to be that way for the next generation. We want them to be the innovators, the ones that are showing the way to do it, so that we're not left behind. The pandemic pointed it out, and a lot of our children in school are going to have to still be catching up maybe 3-4 years from now. A lot of them lost a whole lot of learning because the schools weren't ready, the households weren't ready, and they weren't ready for the online switch that happened. It happened. And we can't cry over spilled milk. What we have to do now is look at, how do we get away from that and not let that happen again? How do we stay in tune and involved? Are we funding our schools enough, or even our charter schools and stuff? Are they being funded? Because it wasn't just public schools. It was a lot of students didn't learn or were left out, and teachers that didn't know. At private, at charter, at public schools, we need to look at schooling and education and learning all the way around. Even some homeschoolers whose parents maybe didn't know exactly how to do all the pivoting that needed to be done. They were probably in a better shape because they've probably been doing some online along with teaching at home. But it's something that we have to get involved with, because the world is moving that way. It isn't moving that way. It has moved that way into technology. Yes, you can get by, you can make a living and live your life without being on a computer at all. That is true. But the technology is involved in your life in some shape, form, and fashion. Even when you get in your cars nowadays, you got to about learn technology to be able to drive, to be able to work all the controls in that. As you bring home the new television set and things like that, you find that, oh, yeah, I've got to learn some technology now because I have to do it. But those are things that we want to be more intuitive to and seeking out, rather than just having it forced upon us, that we're trying to learn. And everybody's not going to learn at the same pace, but we've definitely got to do it because things are moving. And that was what I wanted to talk to or mention to you. So with our HBCUs and them making the pivot, we have to make a pivot. So, and I'm going to pivot right now into another subject. I was talking with a couple of brothers the other day, and we were mentioning the security cameras that we're seeing at more and more Walmarts that, kind of focus in on your face, a little green box coming around. I was in Walmart the other day and looked up, and there's a camera that says for your security, and then the little green box come in like it was really focusing on my face. Not just looking as a camera at everything and stuff, but that green box says it's taking a picture, not taking a picture, but it's using photo recognition on my face. And that's different than just a camera that you see in store security cameras that are up that, okay, yeah, they're taking everything to catch robberies and stuff like that. But now it's taking a photo recognition. It's focusing on the face. I just looked up at it, saw the box, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a little bit different. So I thought I'd do a little checking on that. And one thing we want to know is that, or want to tell you is that, yes, facial recognition and stuff is being used. It says Walmart has been, this is an article that I just put up, Walmart has been installing facial recognition cameras at eye level in the entrances of their new storefronts for some time now. These cameras not only have the ability to cross-reference you with social media networks to put a name with the face, but to utilize software that has the ability to ascertain a great many things about the environment. How much exactly is unknown. But in the video, you can see, and this was an online thing, that there is a lot going on there when they get facial recognition. When you talk about the data that is being used now they can cross-reference that with social media. Now, they didn't say who in social media, but say you've got a Twitter account, a Facebook account, Google photos that you're storing online and stuff. Well, a lot of that is all digitized, and all the rights to it aren't just yours anymore. Once those companies get it, then they can use it. So they can make those pictures available, or the pictures can be used, and the things that some of the photo ID or photo recognition is doing is putting that together. We were in here last week, and Cognitions was doing a show, and they have an experiment going with a dating app, but the lady on Cognitions was saying, well, these people kind of found out who I was. Well, there's a lot of facial recognition out there. And a lot of times, if you've got a picture, or just like me now on here, facial recognition can go back and look and say, well, hey, we see that same face on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch and on LinkedIn. And they can start putting that data together and figuring out a little bit more about you, what you do, what you like, all of those type of things. In one of the articles I saw, it says, more than 35 organizations are now demanding top U.S. retailers cease using facial recognition to identify shoppers and employees in their stores, which companies have used to deter theft and identify shoplifters. The campaign is aptly named Ban Facial Recognition in Stores, and has identified stores that have committed to not using the facial recognition. So after it's brought up, this article that came out July 2021 says the stores that said they won't use it are like Walmart, Home Depot, which Walmart made a change their mind since 2021 from the photo or from the camera that I saw working. And it says for your security. Yeah, it's always good when people do things for you. And Target is now pressuring companies currently using the technology, or those who might use it in the future. Some companies that are currently using the technology, according to the website, include Apple, Lowe's, Albertsons, Macy's, and Ace Hardware. And Apple tells The Verge that it does not use facial recognition in its stores. So we don't know. Companies that might use it in the future include McDonald's, Walgreens, 7-Eleven, and they say a full list can be found on their website. So, you have to think about your privacy. And not just, like you say, some people would say, well, if you're not stealing nothing or doing anything wrong, then there's no problem. But you have to wait a minute. Who's using that, and what can they use it for? As an African American, I know that you don't always have to be doing something wrong. In my lifetime, I've found out, for bad things to happen or people to use information the wrong way. It could be, say that a person had been caught for shoplifting, but if that flags something and the police come with guns drawn saying that, well, they know that this person's a criminal in here, there could be a problem right off the bat. So there's some things that we have to look at. And Tawana Petty, The national organizing director at Data for Black Lives explained in the campaign's press release that Detroit has implemented Project Greenlight, which places surveillance cameras with facial recognition in more than 700 businesses. These cameras using facial recognition are monitored at real-time crime centers, police precincts, and on officers' mobile devices 24/7, she said. It's difficult to explain the psychological toll it takes on a community knowing that your every move is being monitored by a racially biased algorithm with power to yank your freedom away from you. That's the thing we have to look at. Retailers have used this invasive technologies like products that ping your phone's Bluetooth and then catalog its unique MAC address. But AI-powered upgrades to video surveillance systems have allowed features like facial recognition to be more accessible than ever. For instance, Rite Aid quietly installed facial recognition cameras in hundreds of U.S. stores, mostly in non-white and lower-income neighborhoods. Reuters reported that in July of 2020. The cameras scanned shoppers' faces to try to find people in the store who were previously suspected of criminal activity and then sent alerts to security. Walmart also reportedly used Clearview's AI's facial recognition more than 300 times, according to BuzzFeed News, and had previously used the technology to try to catch shoplifters. Now it seems to be taking a different approach by using AI to find unscanned goods in self-checkout kiosks. And since these stores are private properties, companies are not bound by state or local regulations. Banning government use of facial recognition, which has been the most popular form of regulation, only Portland, Oregon has included private businesses in a facial recognition ban. So one thing we know is that it's legal, or in some places it's legal, or there's no laws against it. But we have to look at a lot of the new AI that is being used. And that's for everybody. It can be for good, but you have to also think that there can be some misuse in it. So you just need to make sure that you're aware and working on it. It says now that another article from Government Technology, yes, we've been pulling up a little bit on it today, says, who serves on the new National AI, which is Artificial Intelligence, Advisory Committee? The newly appointed 27 members will advise the federal government on AI topics like competitiveness, equity, and use by law enforcement. Equal AI's Mariam Vogel will chair the group. Google's James Macias is vice chair. So they've got a new 27-member panel or advisory group that's working on AI. So this is important. The government and companies and all are looking at how we're using it and how we maybe need to set up the building blocks for how we use it and not have to come back later and say, oops, we should have done this or that. So that's says they will provide recommendations, to the president and the National AI Initiative Council to serve as blocks for U.S. AI policy for decades to come. And I am immensely grateful for their volunteer service. This is from Don Graves, the Deputy Secretary of Commerce. So one thorny area will be addressing law enforcement's use of AI. The NAIAC will establish a subcommittee to focus on this topic and address considerations like how suited the technology is for use by security and law enforcement, as well as issues of data security and bias. The subcommittee will also advise on what legal standards are needed to ensure that AI use is consistent with privacy rights, civil rights, and civil liberties, and disability rights per the release. The NAIAC is intended to help bring expertise and a broad array of viewpoints to such issues. The National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, which will give administrative support to the board, issued a public statement call for NAIAC member nominations last fall. and said the Department of Commerce wanted members from a variety of perspectives, sectors, and geographic locations. So there's a lot of people that were put on the board. A lot of names I don't know. I'd have to go through and look at them, but they've got them from nonprofits, from academia, and from private tech companies. So there's a wide cross-section. If you guys want me to, I can go through that for later, or we can publish it on the web of the groups and organizations that are looking at this. But artificial intelligence is a thing that we're looking at because it's a thing that's being used in the country, around the world, and will be used more and more and more. Sometimes it's used extensively by repressive governments, but it can also be used for good. So it's not that we want to get rid of it, but I do think we do have to have, like an advisory board, we need to have certain recommendations and regulations or laws that will keep it from being used in a harmful way for people. So keep your eyes out and your ears open for information on AI, artificial intelligence, how it's being used, how facial recognition, that's a part of AI. Driverless cars are a part of AI. It's a big field, but there's a lot of things going on, and we'll try and keep abreast of it. And that's what we need to have our young people involved in, learning how to use these technologies and how we can benefit from them, or how we can eliminate or keep them from being a harmful aspect in our lives. So that's it for me today. This is the BFTAA and More Show. I'm glad that you tuned in. Be sure and tune in every week, every Monday from 5 to 5:45 for the BFTAA and More, brought to you by the Black Family Technology Awareness Association and the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, located 4510 East Linwood Boulevard. Please go check out our websites, follow the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, follow KUAW Radio, and follow the Black Family Technology Awareness Association. We're in the community. We're for the community. We are the community. So thank you for watching. That's it for today, and we will see you next week.